What if 6,000 hardened ISIS fighters had broken out at once? US officials say that nightmare was dangerously close to reality in northern Syria. A senior US intelligence official has described them as the worst of the worst.
In prisons guarded by the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, thousands of ISIS detainees were being held as violence and instability spread across the region. Washington feared the consequences would be immediate. If these 6,000 or so got out and returned to the battlefield, that would basically be the instant reconstitution of ISIS, the official told Fox News Digital.
Behind the scenes, a high-stakes operation was already underway. The senior official described a multi-agency scramble that unfolded over weeks, driven by intelligence warnings, urgent diplomacy, and a rapid military airlift designed to move the detainees out before the situation collapsed. The alarm bells had been ringing for months. In late October, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard began assessing that Syria's fragile transition could tip into disorder, creating the perfect conditions for a catastrophic jailbreak. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence dispatched a senior official to Syria and Iraq to open early talks with the SDF and the Iraqi government. The mission? Find a way to remove what he repeatedly called the most dangerous detainees before events overtook them. Then, in early January, fighting erupted in Aleppo and pushed eastward. Time was running out. We saw the severe crisis situation, the official said. As tensions escalated, ODNI led daily coordination calls across agencies. Secretary of State Marco Rubio handled day-to-day policy decisions, while a working group brought together CENTCOM, diplomats and intelligence officials. All of them focused on one urgent question: how to prevent nearly 6,000 ISIS fighters from slipping into the fog of war. Baghdad understood the stakes immediately. Iraqi leaders feared that a mass escape would send thousands of militants streaming across the border, dragging the country back to what the official bluntly described as a 2014 ISIS is on our border situation once more. The US Embassy in Baghdad worked to clear diplomatic hurdles for what would become a massive logistical undertaking. Then came the lift. CENTCOM surged helicopters and additional resources into the region. In a tightly compressed time frame, thousands of detainees were flown out of Syria and transferred into Iraqi custody. Moving in helicopters, moving in more resources, and then just logistically making this happen, US forces were able to get these nearly 6,000 out in the course of just a few weeks. The detainees are now being held at a facility near Baghdad International Airport under Iraqi authority. But the operation has entered a new phase. FBI teams are on the ground in Iraq, enrolling detainees biometrically. US and Iraqi officials are reviewing intelligence to determine what can be declassified and used in court. The State Department also pressed countries of origin to take responsibility for their citizens. Still, a major challenge remains unresolved. The transfer focused only on ISIS fighters. Families held in camps such as al-Hol were not part of the operation. Control of those camps shifted as the situation on the ground evolved. According to the official, the Syrian Democratic Forces and the Syrian government reached an understanding that Damascus would take over al-Hol, which houses thousands of ISIS-affiliated women and children. Now, he says, the camp appears to be emptying. It appears the Syrian government has decided to let them go free, the official warned, calling the development very concerning for the regional security. Counter-terrorism officials have long viewed the fate of these families as one of the most complex and dangerous loose ends of the ISIS era. Many of the children grew up in the camps after ISIS lost territorial control. Some are now approaching fighting age, raising fears of future radicalization and recruitment. For now, US intelligence agencies say they are closely monitoring developments. They believe the rapid operation prevented thousands of experienced ISIS militants from re-entering the battlefield at once and potentially reigniting the group's fighting force. This is a rare good news story coming out of Syria, the official said. But in a region where instability can turn in an instant, officials know how close they came and how quickly the story could have been very different.
The United States is preparing for a total withdrawal of troops from Syria amid ongoing tensions with Iran. According to Al Jazeera, citing the Wall Street Journal's report quoting 3 U.S. officials, the U.S. military will pull out nearly 1,000 soldiers. The WSJ report indicated that the broader withdrawal of U.S. troops in Syria would unfold over the next 2 months. Remember, the Trump administration has been weighing a full withdrawal since at least January. The fresh move comes as the U.S. military last week withdrew service members from the al-Shaddadi base in northeast Syria and from the al-Tanf base. Al-Tanf base is a key hub for operations for the global coalition led by the U.S. against the Islamic State, which had controlled large areas of Syria and Iraq until 2017. U.S. Central Command said last week's orderly departure was part of a deliberate and conditions-based transition. U.S. officials said withdrawal follows an agreement aimed at reshaping Syria's security structure and consolidating state authority after years of divided control. The deal provides for the integration of the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, Washington's primary partner in the fight against Islamic State, into the Syrian army. U.S. officials have framed the agreement as a significant step towards national unity and reconciliation after years of fragmented leadership in Syria. The arrangement came after a renewed push by Syrian government forces under interim President Ahmed al-Sharia to reassert control over areas that had remained outside Damascus's authority, particularly in the country's northeast, where the SDF has a foothold. The U.S.-backed agreement, reached on January 29th, created a fragile ceasefire and paved the way for negotiations leading to the integration of the two forces. But is troop withdrawal linked to U.S. standoff with Iran? According to the officials, the decision is not connected to the current buildup of U.S. naval and air forces in the Middle East amid tensions with Iran. In recent weeks, the Trump administration has threatened to take military action against Iran over frustrations with ongoing nuclear negotiations. As part of the threat, the U.S. has bolstered its military presence in the region near Iran. A second aircraft carrier and the world's largest, the USS Gerald R. Ford, is currently heading to the area.
The United States has vacated yet another military base in Syria, marking a dramatic shift in its footprint inside a country long scarred by war, proxy battles, and fragile alliances. Syria's defense ministry announced on Sunday that its forces had formally taken control of the al-Shaddadi base in the northeastern Hasaka countryside, following what it described as coordination with American forces. The base, once operated by U.S. troops under the banner of the International Coalition Against Daesh, now stands under the authority of the Syrian Arab Army, signaling a significant recalibration of power on the ground. According to the ministry's statement, the handover came peacefully, but its implications are anything but quiet, as Washington continues to unwind its military presence in a region once considered strategically vital. Al-Shaddadi sits near a town that housed a prison where Kurdish forces detained members of the extremist jihadist organization Daesh before Syrian government forces advanced into the area last month. This development comes just days after the United States confirmed it had vacated the al-Tanf base, a remote but symbolically potent outpost near Syria's borders with Jordan and Iraq. For years, American troops stationed at al-Tanf and al-Shaddadi were part of the coalition effort that led to the territorial defeat of Daesh in 2019, working closely with Kurdish-led forces on the ground. The Syrian Democratic Forces, known as the SDF, were Washington's principal partners in that campaign, spearheading operations that dismantled the so-called caliphate across large swaths of eastern Syria. However, the political landscape shifted dramatically after the fall of longtime ruler Bashar Assad in December 2024, a development that reshaped alliances and forced strategic reassessments in Washington. Since then, the United States has drawn closer to the new government in Damascus, recently signaling that its reliance on Kurdish-led forces had largely passed in the evolving security environment. Yet even as bases are vacated and partnerships recalibrated, the threat posed by Daesh has not disappeared, lingering in the shadows despite its loss of territorial control. On Saturday, U.S. Central Command confirmed that American forces had conducted more than 30 strikes against Daesh targets across Syria earlier this month. Between February 3rd and February 12th, those strikes targeted infrastructure and weapons storage sites, underscoring that while ground presence may be shrinking, air power remains firmly in play. From February 3rd to 12th, CENTCOM forces hammered over 30 terrorist targets with 10 precision strikes, using jets, helicopters, and drones to obliterate infrastructure and weapons caches. This follows 5 earlier hits on ISIS comms sites, logistics hubs, and arms depots from January 27th to February 2nd. It's all part of Operation Hawkeye Strike, launched after ISIS ambushed U.S. and Syrian troops in Palmyra on December 13th, killing 2 American service members and an interpreter. In 2 months, over 50 ISIS fighters killed or captured, more than 100 targets destroyed with hundreds of precision munitions. Pressure's on, ISIS is crumbling. The message from Washington appears layered and deliberate. Boots may be stepping back, but the capacity to strike remains intact and ready. For Damascus, the takeover of al-Shaddadi represents both a symbolic restoration of sovereignty and a practical expansion of control over strategic territory in the northeast. For the Kurdish-led SDF, the evolving dynamic raises pressing questions about future security guarantees and political leverage in a Syria still navigating transition. And for the broader region, the withdrawal from al-Shaddadi and al-Tanf signals a potential pivot point in America's long engagement with the Syrian conflict.